In this video, we're going to look at section 1-6, commutative and associative properties. So these are the properties that make math essentially a lot easier when you can recognize when to use them. So the commutative property is the order in which you add or multiply does not change. So if you have two numbers A and B, you could take A plus B and get B plus A, or A times B and get B times A. So 5 plus 6 is the same as 6 plus 5. And 3 times 2 is the same as 2 times 3. Okay. The associative property is essentially saying the grouping order doesn't matter. So for any numbers A, B, and C, if you have A, the quantity A plus B plus C is equal to A plus the quantity B plus C, and A times B times C is equal to A times B times C. Okay. So looking at the examples, we can get 2 plus 4 is plus 6 is equal to 2 plus 4 plus 6. Or 3 times 5 times 4 is equal to 3 times 5 times 4. All right, so doing the math, you can see that it will always work out. So let's put these in practice. Refer to the, so this is from the beginning of the lesson in the textbook. So find the distance between 5 points and Lakewood, Fort McPherson. So I'm going to mark them off. So we have 5 points right here, and we go all the way to here. So we have 4 different distances between points. So we have 0.4, 1.5, 1.5, and 1.1. So if I take those and go 0.4 plus 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1.1, I can switch this around to make numbers easier to work with. So I'm going to switch 0.4 and 1.5. So I can get 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 0.4 plus 1.1. So now I can essentially say I'm going to use these two and these two together. 1.5 plus 1.5 is just 3. Well, I'll say 3.0 since we're working decimals. And 0.4 plus 1.1 is just 1.5. And now it's two simple numbers put together. I just get 4.5. So it is 4.5 miles away. So now same thing, now just in a normal problem, not a word problem. So 1a, 35 plus 17 plus 5 plus 3. So in this one, I'm going to switch 5 and 17. So I have 35 plus 5 plus 17 plus 3. So then I get 40 plus 20. And then 40 plus 20 is just 60. So making my life easier and finding numbers that work well together. So again, this one, I have 8 and 3/4 plus 12 plus 5 and 1/4. I'm going to switch these two. So I have 8 and 3/4 plus 5 and 1/4 plus 12. Well, a 3/4 plus 1/4 is just a 1 whole. So I end up having 8 plus 5 plus 1, which gives me a grand total of 14, and then I have 14 plus 12, and that just gives us 26. So I'm making numbers out of I'm making combinations of numbers that are easy to do in my head. So now evaluate 8 times 2 times 3 times 5 for the property. Name the property in each step. So we're going to look at this. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to rewrite it first, 8 times 2 times 3 times 5. So from here, I'm going to flip 2 and 3. So I have 8 times 3 times 2 times 5. So doing that was from the commutative. Next, I'm going to group the first two and the last two. So I get 24 times 10. That was the associative property. And then the final one, well, 24 times 10, that's just adding a 0, so I get 240. So, and that's just, taking 24 times 10 out and putting in 240, that's just substitution, essentially. Okay, so there we go. So see how it can make us really easy instead of having, because if we would have started doing 8 times 2 would give us 16, and then 3 times 5 is 15, and then you get 16 times 15. That's not as easy to do in your head as 24 times 10. So same thing, but we're not going to name the steps in this one. We will name them out loud. So in this case, I'm going to look at, I'm going to flip 4 and 10 around to help me out. So I get 2.9 times 10 times 4. That's because we use the commutative. And then I'm going to do the first two. I'm going to associate 2.9 times 10, which would just give me 29. So then 29 times 4, well, now it's not as good, but at least now I can work with no decimals. So 9 times 4 is 6, carry the 3. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 is 1. Is 11, so I get 116. So it makes it a little bit easier. Okay. Next one, 5/3 times 25 times 3 times 2. So again, I'm going to flip this. So I get 5/3 times 3 times 25 times 2, and that is the commutative property. And then I'm going to group the first two and the last two to make it really easy. Well, in the first two, 5/3 times 3, the 3's cancel out, so I'm left with 5. And then I get times 25 times 2 is 50. And then 5 times 5 is 25, with a 0 is 250. So we made it a little bit easier on ourselves, even though we were multiplying by a fraction. Okay, so here's some all the properties we've dealt with in the last couple of sections. We have the commutative property, the associative, the identity properties, the zero properties, the distributive property, and then substitution, where it takes something of equal value out. Okay, so use the expression 4 times the sum of a number. So 4 times the sum of a number. So this one we're translating. So we have 4 times the sum of a number a plus b is increased, that means plus, twice the sum of a plus 2b. So I just translated using those translation words we learned in an earlier section. And so now, we already did a as we wrote it out. Right now, algebra expression, we've done that. So part B says simplify. So I'm going to do that right here. I'm not even going to rewrite it. It just says simplify. So let's simplify now. But here we need to use the distributive property. So we distribute. We can distribute everywhere. So we get 4a plus 4b plus 2 times a is 2a plus 2 times 2b. That would give us 4b. And now we underline our commons, because there's more than 2. So 4a plus 2a is 6a. And then if I'm doing it in pencil, I would just do a double underline. But on here, I will use color for you. So 4b plus another 4b is 8b. And there's a and b are different, so there's nothing else I can do. So I am done.